Welcome to Talking Pictures Trivia, the podcast in which a group of friends explore movies through trivia. I'm one of these friends, KJ, and with me is...
Tom.
Would you believe it? Nick is in the building, or at least
Ooh.
in the airways.
Welcome back, Nick. Hopefully you can keep your streak alive. You've won every episode since May.
Ah, yes.
All right. That's why I needed to take a little break. It was getting to my head.
For those joining us for the first time, we start off each episode with 4 rapid-fire trivia questions and possibly a few bonus questions. Audience, feel free to play along from home. The first question is worth 1 point, and each question after that is worth 1 more point. Then we'll follow it up with our famous movie rant where anything goes. Tom, tell us about today's movie.
Walking up to theaters in 1963, we would have had to choose between 3 period dramas: Young Samurai, Cut the Shadow, 5 Ronins, and 1 non-period drama, which is today's movie, High and Low. KJ will be our questionnaire today. KJ, what is High and Low all about?
In High and Low, we follow Gondo, who is about to make some moves to take over the National Shoe Company, of which he is an executive director, the floor manager. He's high up there. Just before he's about to make this move, after he's mortgaged everything he owns, every asset is leveraged, he gets a call that his kid has been kidnapped. But then his kid walks in the room, and it turns out it was his kid's friend, Gondo's driver, who was kidnapped. And now Gondo has to decide, is he going to pay the ransom and lose it all? Or is he going to risk having his driver's son die? The rest of the movie, we follow the police and Gondo who are trying to figure out who the kidnapper is, as well as making pretty big moral decisions. Once they find out who the kidnapper is, they want to make sure they catch him in the act. And we follow gorgeous camera work as we're moving through Yokohama into different areas, the dance hall, even the jail cell, the hideout, the apartment. Everything looks absolutely gorgeous in this movie, audience.
It's time for question 1.
Gondo's wife confuses the driver's son with her own because the driver's son is wearing what?
Locked
in.
Nick, what do you have?
Cowboy outfit.
Tom?
Wearing the son's cowboy outfit.
Correct. Points for everybody. Starting off pretty easy. Hopefully they're not all too easy. I think easy's high, or I think easy's low. Maybe it's a little high and low.
Easy's high, right? Because it's nice and relaxed.
Nice and oh, jeez, I don't know. Nice and cool. Stay cool, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's time for question 2.
Apart from black and white, what other color do we see in this film?
Locked in.
Locked in.
What do you got, guys?
It's
Red.
that, like red pinkish thing from the suitcase that burns. It looks more pinkish, right? Doesn't it?
Yes, it's very pink, and they distinctly say pink multiple times. Oh,
No.
What do we do? What do we do?
I don't get the point. That's what we do.
You know, I think Nick, we're gonna give you the points. You know, it's been a while. I don't want the winning streak to to end here. Points for everybody, with a little asterisk, I guess.
All right, we'll do your Joe DiMaggio. Keep it alive for another day.
I don't want an asterisk. If I win, I win. He's
That's
the
a red
judge,
asterisk.
jury, and executioner right here, and he said it. I even try to walk back from it.
It's time for question 3.
What does Gondo ask his wife for after the inspector explains what 2 devices are going in the bags?
Oh.
So what does Gondo ask his wife for after the inspector explains what 2 devices are going in the bags?
I'm gonna lock in, but I don't have the specifics. I know, like the genre, so to speak.
I'm gonna lock in with a guess.
All right, Nick, what's your guess?
Some kind of cutting apparatus. I don't know if it was a scissor or a knife.
Tom?
I thought it was like a sewing thing to repair that you would use to repair leather or fix a leather object.
Ooh, you're both right there. I was kind of more or less looking for his tools that he used to make shoes with. which probably included
It's
scissors and
all
sewing,
the
right?
above.
Yeah, I think
But
we're both
this-
right.
Yeah, I think points for everybody or points for nobody either way, because like the spirit of the question is, it was kind of cool. During this, they reached back to his they were trying to show that he was also a blue collar worker at some point, and he still has that available and could
The
use
gift.
that to help.
And it's
Yep.
he's a craftsman, and that's what
Yep.
distinguishes him. Even though the movie's critical of his kind of ruthless businessman pursuit or whatnot, like he's a craftsman, and he represents and respects really good work. That's why he doesn't like their shoes.
Right.
Yes,
They're
because
too
they were
cheap.
trying to make something that was cheaper but more profitable, and it's like,
Mhm.
no, I'm going to take over, but we're still going to make good stuff. And even in the end, not to jump to it, I guess if someone watched this, we can assume spoilers. He worked for another company, which may be not as big, but still made quality shoes.
And he had freedom in that company to.
What do you think that company was called?
The not so national shoe company.
Yeah. Well, there's the national shoe. Normally, if there's the national
The
shoe
regional
company,
shoe company.
the opposite is the American shoe company, but I guess you just call it the Japanese shoe company.
I think it would have been a regional player, whatever. Do we know what region they were in? I don't know.
Yeah, they were in the Kanto region.
So Kanto shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a really good reason to pick, right? Because it's very foreign, isn't it? A lot of foreigners live in that area.
Yeah, in Yokohama. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and well, we get into it, audience, but that the dance scene is so cool. But all right.
Yeah. Real American military in that, because that's where a lot of them are stationed.
It's time for question 4.
Why did the kidnapper have trouble sleeping?
Locked in.
Locked in.
Guys, if you were asking me and I didn't know, I would say it's because the shoe factory kept him up at night. I hope that wasn't your answer, Nick. What do you have?
No, it wasn't my answer. My answer had to do with the weather. I think it was too cold at night and too hot during the day.
Tom?
He mentions it being too hot in the summer, and he mentions it that's why he couldn't sleep, but it's also too cold in the winter. But I think it's real. The stress is on the heat, because Gondo
The heat
has
during the day, I thought.
Yeah, Gondo has the air conditioning. That's the thing.
Points to Tom. I'm not doing any asterisks this
Takes
time.
it down. Yeah, no,
Yeah, too cold
I
in the
knew it
winter.
was a hot and cold thing.
Too hot in the summer, and he would stare up at that palace on top of the hill and curse it for the comfort that Gondo must be living in.
Yeah, I looked up the Japanese statistics in the early 1960s on air conditioning, and almost no one has air conditioning. It's so little, it doesn't move the x-axis.
Wow.
There's no, yeah. So for him to have air conditioning, like that is a signifier of money. That's a rare thing.
I thought it was just like Europe, where it's like we don't have air conditioning.
I don't know how many people in America had air conditioning, but it was extraordinary.
No, I'm talking about today.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, it's a little crazy there, but yeah, I mean, that's such a, when you realize that and you see him in that air conditioned apartment and you see everybody outside like covered in sweat, that's such a signifier of what Kurosawa was trying to do.
The house also really does stand out up there on the hill. Like it's not meant to blend in at all. It's
an
eye-catching, but
thing.
in a bad way. Yeah, exactly.
Well, congratulations to Tom, our winner this week, breaking Nick's streak in person.
I guess I got to run away again.
Yeah, who's the pitcher who pitched to Joe DiMaggio on the day that his hit streak ended? Nobody knows. I'm the only person who
Ryan Nolan.
Ryan Nolan.
That's wrong on many ways. Try to switch it and then add a bunch of decades.
Switch it like Nolan Ryan?
Yes.
Oh, is it Nolan Ryan? Yes. Well, audience, stay tuned for our beautifully shot and perfectly paced movie rant coming up right after this break. Join another Talking Studios production, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games. Text-based adventure games were computer games from before computers had graphics. The game uses text to describe a scene, and the player types back how they want to interact with the game. I'll read the text from the computer, and my co-host will feed me commands. This season, we're playing through The Hobbit from 1982 on the ZX Spectrum. Here's a quick sample.
I thought a lot about our first command, and I think it should be no print because we don't want to print things as we're going along.
I think by default, it's not going to print. And even if I did type print, where is it going to print to? 1982?
I would imagine if we go west, we're going to be south of the troll, right? Just south of the troll
Yeah,
land.
let's try it.
You go west. The troll's clearing. The visible.
Oh, we died.
Oh.
All right.
The troll saw us and killed us.
So I think we have to say the answer to the riddle then.
The answer is dark.
Say dark, I think.
Talk to what?
Gold.
Say Gollum dark.
You talk to Gollum. Thorin says, hurry up.
And we died.
And we died.
So we went northeast last time. So let's go southwest.
You go southwest. Visible exits are north, northwest. You see the valuable golden ring.
Oh.
We're ending it here. That's
Wait.
perfect.
All
That's
right.
perfect.
Limited Lexicon, coming to your podcatcher and YouTube in late 2022 by Talking Studios. And we're back. So we mentioned that gorgeous house on top of the hill, which I think was inspiration for Parasite in the house and out of the house. How did you guys feel about this incredible symbol of wealth and prestige and frivolity? Frivolity
That's
up
it.
there
That's
on
definitely
the
it, KJ. That's you got it.
Yeah,
Frivolousness.
You're
frivolity.
not frivolous with your words. Oh wait.
Yeah, the comparison to Parasite is interesting. I think Parasite does the same thing Kurosawa is doing. It does it in a more ham-handed way, in a more obvious way. And it's also Parasite doesn't know what genre or what style it's going for. Kurosawa's High and Low, it's right on the money with the name, is really influenced by his early Marxist years, something he had left behind by the early 1960s, but was still there. It's also responding to the post-World War II boom, which was still going on in the early 1960s, which Kurosawa had some trouble with. He saw the kind of inequality that was coming out of that as a major problem. And it's also a kind of Western invasion type thing that's going on. Selecting the city he did for this, which was a major port city, which was still occupied by many foreigners and many Americans who actually appear in this movie. The Americans we see in this movie are actually servicemen living in Japan at the time. You can see a sort of eroding of some sort of old world way in which Japan had been. And in the center of all of this, the owner of the house is Gondo, who becomes the victim and the hero. And he's an interesting character. He's not like the wealthy man in Parasite, who's merely a stereotype of the wealthy. Gondo's a fully fleshed out character, and we see this in the fact that he starts at his company at age 16. He starts as a person who is in manual labor. He's actually making the shoes and other leather products when he starts. And he also has a sort of high quality standard for the work he wants to put out. Now, that is in contrast with his ruthless business tactics, where he's trying to take over the company in a kind of underhanded way.
But I don't mean to jump in there, Tom. I'm sorry, but they were all going to do that, just in their own
They
ways,
were all going
right?
to do that, but I think Gondo's more interesting than they because they are almost like fully commercial. They want the cheapest product for less. Gondo is a craftsman, but he's also a ruthless businessman, and I feel like he stands at the center of, or on the fence between a kind of older Japanese sensibility or an older world sensibility of a kind of maintaining a certain social structure that is based upon kind of discipline and quality, and this new sort of consumerist world, which is all about the cheapest for the least in order to make the most money.
Ooh, we're getting close to modernity. We're getting close to
No, but
modernity.
I got to jump in here because I think the reason I cut Tom off, which I'm sorry I did, Tom,
You can
was
cut me off. That's somebody.
because the word ruthless, in his mind, he's not ruthless. He's a savior of the National Shoe Company. These people are all going to take it down the wrong path. His tactics will allow him to save the company and still create a solid quality product. So that's the only thing I wanted to interject. It from his perspective, he's not being, backstabby or anything like that. He thinks this is the right way. These other people are going to destroy the company, and I'm going to risk it all and save the quality and integrity of the National Shoe Company. And of
Sure.
course, then I'm going to run it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's something in there, right? And I agree with you, and I think I agree with you kind of on that general ethos as well. I think what Kurosawa is showing us, though, is a sort of material attachment. And I don't think you can separate anything in Gondo's life from the latter scenes where Gondo is in the house and they're auctioning everything. And you hear that clock, and the clock has a little tag on that says up for auction. And that's when all that which is material and his vanishes. And I think Kurosawa is pointing to this sort of opulence as something that is not to be contained or controlled, that ends up containing or controlling us. And in the end, we can see Gondo as a hero because he does have the ability to kind of give this up to save the life of his driver, which is essentially an underling, right? It's somebody he's responsible to in a style or social circumstance that reflects more what we see in the Seven Samurai or something like that, a more traditional structure. And so, while I agree with you, Nick, and I also think this kind of this sort of skepticism about capitalism in Japan is not something I share. I don't share Kurosawa's opinion with this, but I don't care because I think Kurosawa does it quite beautifully. And I think he does it beautifully in a way which I really hate with Parasite, where everybody's kind of a stereotype. Gondo is not. Gondo is a person who is not simply the embodiment of the Western influence on Japan or something like that. He's a man, and what he suffers is something that we respect him for, but it's an honest suffering, and his way back up is, we hopefully it's good. But I think he's a person who's been humbled by that experience. And I think it is revealed as well in his conversation with the kidnapper, where the kidnapper wants Gondo to hate him. And Gondo seems perplexed by, like, why would I want you to die? Why would I take pleasure in this? There's something um there's something deeply human about him. And I think that's what makes him such a compelling character. And that's what makes the high and low of this movie, the up and the down, the economic inequality and whatnot, simply a stereotypical beat the rich type thing that we see in Parasite. It's far more grounded in these people and in things very often we can't explain.
Well, let's talk about the title a little bit, High and Low. So in Japan, the title was better translated to Heaven and Hell, which I think is a much better title, right? Gondo was living in heaven from the kidnapper's perspective. The kidnapper said he was living in hell, but when they go down Dope Alley or whatever they called the
That's hell.
Holy moly! You realize
That's hell.
there's levels here, right? There are absolute levels, and I think Kurosawa explores them incredibly, and I don't think he judges them very much.
Yeah. He's a little angry at the kidnapper. The kidnapper is heartless, and Kurosawa does certain things like having the kidnapper. So at the point, the kidnapper, for the audience, this is towards the end when the kidnapper buys dope to experiment on a drug addict to see if,
Awful, right?
yeah, to see if he could kill a drug addict. So he goes to a drug addict area, a dope alley, and sees these like zombie people who are just kind of living half alive in this alley waiting for drugs. It's
And he adds this noise that is just whispering the whole time that they're there, and there's this whisper that's just happening left and right and left and right. It's one of the creepiest, coolest scenes I've ever seen.
Yeah, but through the whole scene and even the dance, the kidnapper is wearing glasses, so it gives him a kind of an alien aspect, right? We can't see his eyes
specifically. Yep.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, sunglasses. Yep. So we can't see his eyes. So I think he's a little harsher on him. But even there, at the end, when he breaks down and cries in the jail cell, there's a sort of it's not so much he's a monster, he's just misformed by the circumstance. But I think you're right. I think like nobody, it's heaven and hell, but nobody is bereft of their humanity. Even the kidnapper is a sort of deformed human, but he's a human of circumstance, right? And not just a stereotype also.
The only thing that doesn't add up about the villain or the kidnapper is he's an intern or something at
Yes.
at a medical facility, presumably on track to become a doctor.
A doctor. I
And
agree.
I don't know. Maybe in the '60s, maybe in the '60s in Japan, doctors aren't what they are in the U.S. today.
No, that was
But he's still just an intern. Like that's
he's on the
not
track to
someone-
be a doctor.
Right, like in 5 years, a little plus, maybe you have air conditioning, man. Like it was a little weird.
Yeah, that is pointed out in a lot of the critical literature. Part of what Kurosawa is responding to, this is, I should mention, based on an American novel called King's Ransom, which is a far, I don't want to say dumber book, but that's what came to mind. It's a far less subtle book, let's say. And the kidnappers are just kind of blue collar pieces of crap. This was an interesting thing because what was going on in Japan at this time was actually a spate of kidnappings. So there's a lot of high profile kidnappings, including in the 1950s, a kidnapping of a famous comedian's child for, I think, like 2 million yen or something like that.
Boy.
And part of what happened with kidnapping is, I think the maximum penalty was like 5 or 7 years. And this movie in part is pointing a finger at the leanness of the penalties for kidnapping, which had become a big thing in the post-war years. Very often the children were killed. They would get the money and they would kill the children. There's actually a kidnapping that happened about a month after this movie came out, and the kidnapper had seen the movie right before the kidnapping. The kidnapper also murdered the child. And I think that kidnapper was actually a dentist, so he was a little more well-to-do.
What a happy episode we have here today.
Yeah, but that was, as people have pointed it out, there was a critic who pointed, I don't remember the name of the critic, but the critic pointed out that, yeah, actually people in Japan mentioned that. Like, this guy's going to do pretty well very soon. Like, why is he kidnapping? Most kidnappers are blue collar or unemployed. And I think it throws a little more mystery into what is inspiring this man to behave as he does.
And what's his psyche? Like maybe there's more to it. There's something disturbed about him.
Yeah, it's not just the money, right? It's not just that. There's an anger at the circumstances of the world. And that's, yeah, I think his status as medical intern highlights that.
So another thing I want to talk about, I watched this movie twice. I'd seen it kind of recently and then again for this episode. The ending scene, the first time I watched it, didn't feel good to me. The scene with Gondo and the kidnapper in the jail, going back and forth. But this time it hit perfectly. And I didn't notice this the first time, but that whole sequence, you can almost always see both of them. Because the reflection of the face of the other one is right next to the other one. And I thought that was another cool way to have the high and low sitting right next to each other, if Gondo at that point still represents the high. Or the heaven and hell. Maybe, again, that might be a better, if Gondo still represents heaven and the kidnapper represents a hell, you just saw them like almost imposed on each other. It was another really cool camera trick. And I don't usually like those kind of camera tricks, but it worked great here.
Yeah, that whole scene is gorgeous. They become aspects of one another. We see Gondo, who is on the point of tears for this man. We see Takeuchi, who is determined to not break down, and yet still never give a justification. It's an interesting thing. It's like, it is anger at circumstance that is so deep that it becomes your personality. And that ends up being the hell at the end. It isn't just the circumstance, it's the internal deformity that the circumstance creates. And yeah, I agree. Watching them imposed upon one another as if they're if they're linked without ever really being able to be severed, right? This man is always going to be part of Gondo. He's going to be part of that man's autobiography. And he's, a Takeuchi, right? That's the kidnapper's name, Takeuchi, is, correct me if I'm wrong. Takeuchi. Takeuchi is now going to die in order to try in the end to humiliate or harm Gondo, who's just a representative of this circumstance. Yeah, watching them imposed upon one another is excellent. And watching that last shot where Takeuchi's taken away and we see Gondo from behind. We don't see his response as the the gate closes that separates them off. It's yeah, really, really great. The original ending was him going back and speaking with the chief investigator, Gondo going back and speaking with the chief investigator. And they filmed that scene, but it ended up being cut because Kurosawa thought this was a better ending.
Yeah, I mentioned KJ and I were talking offline about that. I was saying he liked that ending so much that he changed what he was going to do.
Hmm.
Now, I can't end this episode without us talking about Toshiro Mifune.
Mhm.
Would this movie still been as strong if he wasn't the main character, Gondo? Because I really like this actor from other Kurosawa films, specifically the Ronin or the samurai in Yojimbo, Sanjuro. Those are really good, and it's the same actor. He's in Throne of Blood. He's in a lot. Rashomon. He is excellent. But I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on that because I don't know if I'm biased just because I like this guy so much from other things.
He was amazing in this, and I think what Tom was saying before, that Gondo felt like a man, not like a caricature, or even a character. A part of that is the script giving him a lot of not a lot of backstory, but a really good feeling backstory. But a lot of that was Mifune. I did not recognize him the first time I watched this. And then when I read it
really?
was Mifune, I thought they had it wrong. I'm like, oh, they're just assuming he's in all of Kurosawa's movies. They just copy and paste him. But he was great in this.
He's assertive. That's what we see. We see him like, he has this kind of vitality, this sort of energy. Even when he's showering, that one scene where he's showering and he puts on the bathrobe and he has to run out and get he showers with this like energy, he wipes that water off of him and goes out there. And it's watching this man who is like Elan Vital. He is the center and the energy in any room he's in. In the end, sit quietly with the inexplainable and watch with tears what cannot be explained become human to him is a lovely thing. To watch that arc. And it's really interesting too. The movie structured, it starts off with this kind of kidnapping thing, and then it becomes a police procedural.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
there was one scene where it's a 10-minute scene where they just discuss the evidence. The police they all sit around and discuss the evidence. I looked it up. It was 7% of the movie was that one scene.
It's another great scene though.
Yeah, it's great. They're all great. Yeah.
Another scene where you see the sweat of the summer and the heat that everybody's going through.
Yeah.
And then another really long scene is the dance scene. The dance scene is incredibly
incredible.
long. Oh, and
it's incredibly long, but it's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous
He starts
the whole
shooting
time.
with the glass. You see that building from the inside that room from the glass ceiling. And so you don't exactly know what you're looking at when you're first in that room. It becomes, and then he fills space. Like Kurosawa's able to stack characters in spaces, but he's also able to just collapse them. And that dancing is one where there's collapsing them. Another one is when we see Takeuchi's house, his apartment or whatever, and he's trying to take that money out. We're so close, we cannot see the whole prop of the suitcase with the money. But I think I just brought that up. It's like, you have this really famous actor who's really controlling the scene, and then Kurosawa has the kind of the bravery to let him go. The second half of the movie, he's gone, and we move on. And I think that's where we kind of are introduced to the kidnapper when we see it might have been Takora, the main police inspector, or maybe it was some people who work for him, but we see them walk along the canal, and that's when you first see the kidnapper in the dirty water of the canal. That's when you first see him. And so it's kind of like as we're moving.
Oh yeah. And then they go over to him. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
As we're moving into the low, we kind of say goodbye to the high, and we say goodbye to the highs, the symbol of the high, which is Mifune. And then we move into the low, and it's like we first see the low through a filthy canal water, like the shadow of him from behind in this filthy water. And I love that sort of very distinct like section break. New section here. How they did that. Yeah. It's also apparently was a very clean canal, and they spent a lot of time trying to make it dirty. Like it was just like a big problem trying to make this thing look dirty.
Well, I'd like to once again congratulate our own Mifune, Tom.
I'm very vital.
It's true, audience.
That is high praise, actually, if he's calling you that.
You can rate and review this show anywhere podcasts are available. For those viewing in YouTube land, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the Talking Studios channel for all our exciting content, and follow us on Twitter at Talking Studios. Check out other shows by Talking Studios, including Keep Making Movies, where we explore micro-budget films, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games, and Get the Point, where we slowly reveal a movie poster and try to guess which movie poster it is. Got a question for us? Call the Talking Studios hotline at 201-467-8679 and leave a message. It may be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Talking Pictures Trivia wherever fine podcasts are found.
Join us next time when we discuss Some Like It Hot from 1959. Stay tuned for our first impressions of Some Like It Hot.
Ding, 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 ding.
Wow, Talking Studios.
Okay, we got to watch a movie and talk about it.
Well, fortunately, we already watched the movie. One would hope.
It had its highs and lows.
Thank
Save
you.
it for the episode.
Thank God we're recording. Thank God. Got that gem.
So we'll bring it back. Do you want me to throw it back to you, Nick, and keep talking about the house on the hill?
No.
No. I'm gonna bring it back and throw it to you, Tom.
So how did I win all these episodes that I wasn't on?
We just always said you won.
Oh.
We refuse to acknowledge a different reality.
Unless the guest won, then we say you tied. We didn't have that many guests, though.
There we go. There we go. I'll take it.
Yeah. I like to imagine when you retire, you'll go back and watch all those movies and listen to those episodes. But then I think...
No.
You're not retired.
I'll go back and watch all the movies. I don't know if I'm going to go back and listen to all the episodes. That's a lot of content.
That's not very endorsing.
I didn't know we were still recording.
We have 2 reviews for our podcast. A, my daughter. It's good to fall asleep with. B, Nick. He's not going to go back and listen.